This video is sponsored by Aura.
There's one more secret I feel I have to share with you. I did not care for
Mark and Eve dating. Mark had more chemistry with Amber, and I am tired of Invincible trying to gaslight me into believing otherwise. We spent 2 seasons building up to Mark and Eve dating, only for it to be the most underwhelming relationship I've seen since. With it taking the worst threesome in existence and Mark breezing past his friend's death to get me to go from neutral to okay on them dating. Like, I love Mark and Eve as characters, but when it comes to caring about them being together, constantly sitting on a roof, saying I was underwhelmed would be putting it mildly. Which is frankly insane given how much the show wants us to love these two together. But in my personal opinion, after all the show did to transparently keep them apart, to the way it rushed them together, and then how it handled them once they were an item, I think Mark x Eve is a ship tailor-made to bore me. And I will stress, bore me. It's fine if other people like it, this won't be a full-on slander against the writing, though there will be lots of shade. But for my personal taste, I just want to break down why they didn't do it for me, and how people calling boring fictional relationships healthy does feel like an insult to all the healthy and interesting couples in media. Alright, let's get into it.
That I have a confession to make. I like to take my cybersecurity very seriously. I've been around enough to know just how easy it is for one unsecure Wi-Fi connection to leak all your info onto the dark web, and often you won't even know about it till it's been way too late. This is why I am thankful to have today's sponsor, Aura. Are you fed up with the constant threat of data breaches and the anxiety of identity theft? Well, let me introduce you to Aura, a powerful all-in-one digital security solution designed to safeguard your personal information and give you peace of mind. With Aura, you'll receive instant alerts if your accounts are compromised or your personal data is ever at risk. And they don't just stop there, they also help you securely manage your passwords and protect you from pesky phishing scams. Aura has been a godsend helping me keep my information safe, and with Aura's family plan, you can protect up to 5 adults and just unlimited kids, so everyone you know and love can be protected. And let's not forget, you can keep an eye on your credit score right there on the dashboard. As someone who prioritizes online privacy, and you kinda have to for this job, Aura has been a game changer. Their comprehensive approach allows me to feel secure and focused on what truly matters in life. So if you're ready to take charge of your online safety, visit aura.com/sarcasticcourse or click on the link down in the description below. Get a free 14-day trial of Aura, giving you plenty of time to find out if your information is at risk and to get Aura to step in and take care of it.
Cards on the table, I've always been apathetic to the idea of Mark and Eve dating. I like them as friends, and Eve's solo stuff was consistently good. The special was amazing. But whenever the idea of them becoming a couple reared its ugly head, my eyes kinda glazed over. No shit was the couple that this show has been salivating over since the second time they met gonna be Endgame. Mark and Eve hooking up wasn't obvious, it was being drilled into our heads that they were inevitable. And if you know anything about me, you should know that I've never liked will they, won't they romances. However, while I've said that for years, I do want to clarify that statement as, you see, most endgame couples are obvious. I don't hate a romance for taking its time to get 2 people together. I can appreciate a good slow burn if it's written well and the path to get there is engaging. No, what pisses me off is feeling like my time is being wasted. When a story feels like it could have these two end up together right now, waiting for some nonsense to get in the way and keep that from happening. Stuff can happen that delays a couple getting together, but it has to at least respect my intelligence by semi-hiding that's what's going on. In a meta sense, everything that happens in a story is done to keep things interesting. Most romances would be short stories if people just behaved like people and asked each other out. So in that sense, obstacles are welcomed. They make the triumphs of overcoming them even better. But if the story is too obvious that something is only here to delay the inevitable, then even if I end up liking it, that little bit of annoyance is going to poison the well in the back of my mind. With this being my biggest problem with Mark and Eve in Invincible. It's Amber, but let me explain, as this isn't actually the character's fault. You see, Eve and Mark are treated like they're soulmates. The universe seems to ooh and squee at them breathing the same air together, with this being at its truest when they first meet at school. Mark is bummed out on account of his dad being in the hospital after his victims had the nerve to fight back, and Mark is dealing with the fact that he botched his first real test as a superhero as the aliens were invading and Mark shit the bed and crumpled an old lady. Things would have been a lot worse, but Eve and her team saved the day. So having seen her in the tights, he recognized her out of them, and the two have a nice chat on a roof, and oh my god, they really have always been on some fucking roof. But to be fair, this is good. Mark, he does need this, and I do enjoy their initial bond, as this boy is at a point in his life where he desperately needs someone to talk to. No one knows his secret yet. His mom is busy watching over an unconscious murderer, so Mark needs someone more experienced with this whole superhero world to help give him some guidance and let him vent about what just happened. Which is where Eve does come in clutch. She's a kind, ribbing presence that Mark immediately begins to lean on for support. We don't exactly know what's gonna happen between them, except that's a fucking lie, because their next scene is covered by a love song. Artificial love. I couldn't play the song because of copyright, but Might Not Make It Home by LPX is a song about a couple that just met at a club experiencing the joy of being together. It's very on brand for the on-the-nose musical choices of Invincible. But yeah, I think it works as they are telegraphing that this is a more than friends situation. And it gets even more obvious when Mark looks destroyed when he finds out that zoinks, Eve has a boyfriend. Now, in fictional terms, this is basically screaming that Mark and Eve's relationship is meant to be seen in a romantic light. They're not just a guy and a girl who are friends. Mark has caught feelings, but oh no, she's dating some douche. So we gotta pump the brakes on them, even as Mark is letting slip about Eve to his mom, which immediately triggers the mom embarrassing her son over his crush. You don't see what the show is doing by this point, I can't really help you. Especially how by the end of the episode, Eve gets to play the damsel in distress to motivate Mark to lock in and take out the Flaxen leader, which I'm sure will never happen again. But we do this because Eve, she's special to Mark, and the show has wasted zero time reinforcing that idea. And to be fair, I think if it was just this, I would be fine. This is a pretty standard setup as far as like TV romances go. Guy likes girl, she's not available. It's effective and believable enough for what it is. You don't like it, but you know it. However, the thing that made me roll my eyes is how the show just then inserts Amber into this mix. See, after an episode of establishing Mark's clear romantic interest in Eve, the show basically throws Amber at Mark, which you think, okay, that's fine, they're both dating and oh, Rex cheated on Eve, and they broke up, and oh no, Mark is dating Amber now. What they're doing is so excruciatingly obvious. Mark is only with Amber so he can't immediately get with Eve. And let it be noted, Mark doesn't bat an eye at Amber till she gives him her number. He doesn't try to save her from the bully because he has a crush. Mark did it because he's a good person. With the first episode and the next, then just setting up Amber's interest in him, all while he is clearly focused almost exclusively on Eve. The fact that in episode 3, fresh off of breaking up with Rex, they took out a bad guy, Eve leans in for what looks like a kiss with Mark that he fails to recognize, only for her to then, go to his house at night, only for, oh no, he's sucking face with Amber. All of these events, back to back to back, makes what the show doing just painful. They are so transparent in what they're doing, and that drives me insane. It's it's sad. They had a thing, but no, they're with other people, then he's with someone else. But no, all my negative ass can see is just how much time is about to be spent on a couple that has no shot of lasting.
The game was rigged from the start.
Yeah, Amber and Mark were always doomed. I always knew they were doomed, as a story wouldn't take the time to set up a potential romance between Mark and Eve, then try to make it feel tragic that they don't end up together if they weren't gonna hook up eventually. Amber is a plot device, and this annoys me. Because yeah, I do actually like Mark and Amber hanging out together. The writing and the actors give the couple way more chemistry in 2 episodes than Mark and Eve had in all of season 3. But while I like Mark and Amber's chemistry, yeah, their relationship isn't that great. I said this in my original review of season 1, but for a show with writing as good as Invincible's, putting a fresh spin on so many old superhero tropes, the romantic subplot of the teen hero keeping his identity hidden from his girlfriend is shockingly stale. You could tell me that they copy and pasted the storyline from 1985 and I would believe it, with the only updates being Amber being given a personality and the twist that Amber knows Mark is a superhero, which was executed so poorly that it made Amber the most hated person on the show, especially when combined with Massage Noir. Amber is what I would describe as a stopgap love interest. She's only here to keep Mark and Eve from hooking up in season 1, with the story never doing enough with this relationship to distract me from this fact, leaving me ever so salty at the show whenever it tried to turn its head and ship Eve and Mark together. Like, when Eve pops in to tell Mark she's running away from home to use her powers to actually help people, it's sweet, but it happens smack dab in the middle of Mark trying to fix his relationship with Amber, with him fully zoning out as he stares longingly into the sky after she leaves. Invincible has always made it crystal clear that while Mark was with Amber, Eve was who he really should be with, making Amber the stopgap between that happening and the disposable black girlfriend, whose screen time evaporates the second she stops dating Mark. Disposable black love interest trope, it's a thing. Here's a link to a couple other videos that would break it down a lot better than I could. I can gel with a will they won't they love story, but when the story is this obvious about what it's doing, it's gonna make me like the endgame couple less. I'm sorry about this, but I am just too petty and have too much respect for my time. Especially when after the bad breakup, the finale just throws Amber and Mark back together.
Kill me later.
I groaned so much when this happened, as I knew this meant we were just getting another season of the same shit. Though thankfully Amber's arc in season 2 is handled better, even if it's still clearly doomed and the writing seems scared to have Amber be non-polite at all to Mark after all the backlash. But this is a Mark and Eve video, not an Amber video. So here's the actually relevant thing. Season 2 fucked up the one thing will they won't they's are supposed to be good at, making me crave catharsis. See, many storylines don't have good romantic subplots. Even great shows can have mid-storylines about just the characters ending up together, but at times, you don't need great writing, you don't even need good writing. You just need to be a tease. If you dangle a ship in front of someone long enough, especially when it's for younger audiences, make them think like, oh, it's just about to happen, only to pull away at the last second, leave breadcrumbs of feelings to fit on a conspiracy board, leading to that big final kiss. Do all that, and even when the writing isn't great, the audience will still crave catharsis. The release of those two characters getting together, as at least then, it will be over. You'll know who ended up with who, all the weighing will have amounted to something, providing closure so we can move on with our lives. Entire stories are built around this. People will follow a couple for years even if it just evolves into hate-watching masochism. And Invincible, to me, fails at this, as Eve and Mark getting together isn't what the story made me crave. What it made me want was for Mark and Amber to break the fuck up.
Well, we're waiting.
Again, this is all my personal opinion, but I feel like even if the story is trying to seed Eve and Mark throughout the story, their lack of screen time together leads to their relationship to feel just way more muted for how fast the story goes later. I know, like, the writers don't want Mark to be a bad person in this way, but by not amping up his longing for Eve even when he's with Amber, it makes a real focus on my attention just the death spiral that this couple has found themselves in. So whenever Eve pops, it's like, oh yeah, that's clearly what's gonna happen afterwards. And like Amber and Mark's initial breakup in season 1, that was what they had been building to. But the way they just slapped them back together made the slow walk to them breaking up all the more insufferable. The writing may be decent, hey, it's even good at times, but like always, the romantic subplots have always been the least fresh part of Invincible's writing. If you've seen one superhero storyline about a civilian love interest who can't handle the strain of dating a superhero, you've seen most of what Invincible has to offer, with the looming specter of Eve making me just check my watch, as even just seeing Amber put up with a lot of shit endeared her to some of her former haters. I personally just wanted this to be over, as I knew she was gonna be yeeted from this story once they broke up, which after all this nonsense is for the best. I enjoyed even Mark's solo stuff in season 2. Mark breaking up with Amber as part of him crashing out and living a normal life is what that season is really focused on, but the breakup happened, and now, after all the breadcrumbs, they just get together. And how they do it feels just as manufactured as when Amber just was used to keep them apart.
Mark, wait.
Now, I haven't read the comics, so tell me in the comments if I'm off base here or not, but I get the sense from watching the show that Mark and Eve hung out a lot more in the original story. Hence, old Eve telling Mark that she's always loved him and to tell her younger self one way or the other, and that would serve the purpose of putting to rest a much more prominent will they won't they situation. This would be them cutting off all the bullshit, pointing Mark in the right direction, and just saying go. And I say all this because in the show, I don't think it fully works, as Mark and Eve don't hang out all that much. And when they do, more often than not, they're talking about Amber. So while Eve is Mark's most fleshed out female relationship outside of his family, having Mark be told 3 hours after his emotional breakup with his girlfriend that Eve is into him, that does feel a little bit iffy. The body wasn't even cold, and the story was pushing Mark to confess his feelings to a different girl, and yeah, I was judging. It'd be one thing if Mark just realized like, okay, 100% she's into me, I've always been into her, and goes for it, but the way this situation played out over the first 2 seasons, how much time we put into Mark and Amber and him trying to make this work, it does feel slightly weird. And it reminds me of how Mark got with Amber, how someone just popped into his life, was into him, and all he had to do was not fumble it. A challenge for Mark, I know, but this is where we finally get into season 3, and I can say the things that'll get me killed. Starting with the fact that for a relationship that's been delayed and built up over the course of 2 seasons, them actually getting together feels not just rushed, but a weirdness that I struggled for the longest time to just explain what it was. As yeah, the rush comes from the aforementioned tip from Eve's older self, how Rex and William are both telling him just like, oh yeah, just ask her out already. And they go from talking in episode 1 to essentially being together by the end of episode 2. Now again, if the will they won't they thing had been more prominent in season 2, I might have been able to give this a pass. But when it actually comes time for them to start talking, something feels different.
We're both superheroes. We both know the life.
Now, here's how I describe the weirdness of what they feel, and it is probably my most disgusting take about Eve and Mark, and it's that I think in season 3, it's where they have the worst chemistry. In fact, I'd go so far as to say that the dialogue that they're given makes it feel like all their interactions are on autopilot. I'm being for real. When Mark first asked out Eve, her response after saying yes is to stress just how much of them dating would make sense. Like, oh, we're both superheroes, already been in life and death situations. Eve talking about why she's willing to give this a chance boils down to practicality and is something that I don't think these characters need to state. Yeah, they both fucking know that they're superheroes and understand the life. Eve has dated superheroes before. This truly feels like it's just here for the audience and saying like, oh no, things are gonna be different from last time. There's no real excitement about finally dating Mark or the dread about her dating her friend's ex. And I know that they're keeping things placid so they can then have Eve be pissed once Mark reveals that this was prompted by her older self, but this sense that their relationship and the writing for it is on autopilot never fully goes away, as they act how you would expect a superhero couple to, which is okay, but it's not until the finale does it feel like the story rewards them for loving and supporting each other. We'll get back to that though, as I don't want to rush past how the story is greasing the wheels to get these two together as fast as possible. Like, I raise an eyebrow at Mark saying,
"That's not fair, you know it's more than that."
But the fact that they made the proof of Mark's feelings being the fact that he internally, off screen, could only think about Eve when he was running for his life, I'm like, sir, please, I want to like this ship. Don't just say something that sounds like it works, but we don't actually get to experience it. So Mark busting this out, this to me didn't feel like Mark like, oh, I'm confessing my feelings. It was no, Udo reverse card, y'all didn't see this coming. And I feel like if you already wanted them to be a couple, I'm sure this works. But if you're on the fence like I was, after All the bullshit Amber was used for to keep these bitches apart, something that happened off screen being the thing that proves Mark's love to Eve is just, it's like the writers are doing everything they can to make sure that I, personally, never get invested in them. I mean it, and if that wasn't enough, Eve's main role this season getting boiled down to Mark's girlfriend definitely clinched it. Oh my god. The funniest post I've seen about this on Blue Sky was just, and I quote, "Eve had more sex than character development this season, and it is so true." The last solo thing she does in episode 3 was just moving back in with her god-awful parents, and yeah, she's going to college to be an architect off screen so she can do things with her powers off screen. Which is crazy since up until this point, Invincible has been so good about giving like the main female characters in the story so much depth and nuance. Debbie apparently didn't do jack shit in the comics, but here, she's my favorite character. Her storyline with Nolan is amazing. So Eve, while not getting the spotlight all the time, what she had going on was really good. So it's crazy then for all of that to grind to a halt the second she and Mark start dating, and I find that a little sus. I'm sure she'll do more with all of this in the future, but for this season, the one where they first get together and Eve getting hurt is what motivates Mark on 2 different occasions. I again refer back to my point that for all the good reconstruction work Invincible does with superhero tropes, the ones tied to Mark's love life are the least updated. They don't have that new spin or extra layer to make it truly feel fresh and interesting, which is how I would describe Mark and Eve's interactions for the rest of this season.
Are you okay? You look like you've had a rough one.
I love Katara. She's the heart of Team Avatar, which is frankly the worst job in the classic 5-man band, having to be the emotional rock of everyone else, having to get called preachy by a fandom who just because, but when really, without her, everyone would have lost hope or become a worse person. It's not glamorous, but it is a vital part of the story, and I don't think Invincible uses Eve well in this regard. I've peeped other reviews of season 3, and damn near all of them made the same joke about Mark and Eve always sitting on the roof. Mark will be bummed out after getting smacked around by everyone, and the moral quandary he failed to find a heroic way out of. So, he's left tired and exhausted, as yeah, he's trying to be a good guy in a morally gray world, with Eve being there to tell Mark that he did the right thing and to try and console him. Rinse and repeat for the rest of the season. And this type of interaction between them got dull really quickly, and I feel like this comes down to a couple things. But the main one, the one that actually kills my investment in seeing just any of this happen, is that Eve is never allowed to actually lift Mark up. Outside of like once out of 7 scenes, every one of these check-ins doesn't end in Mark feeling better or confident in what happened. People have described these scenes as like, oh, this is what we learned today part of the story, but actually, Mark doesn't learn shit. He never ends an episode feeling like he did the right thing till the finale where he killed a guy. And that's kind of the point of this season, breaking down Mark. So having Eve be here, trying to tell him how much she believes in him, how he did his best, it feels like all this is undercut by the story, which is bullying Mark into being a killer, and that he didn't do the right thing, that he needs to change, rendering Eve's attempts to be Mark's heart to feel ineffective. The closest she gets to a Katara moment is telling Mark how he's Nolan's victim as much as anyone else's. But by the end of the actual episode, there's nothing left for her to say. Mark is just borderline depressed. Truly, all Eve really does this season in her relationship to Mark is keep his mental health barely above water, which doesn't feel like a triumph, it feels like work. Which gets us into like the, oh yeah, they're a healthy relationship, therefore it's good argument that I often see floating around. As yeah, I can see why people would get the feels from Eve attempting to help Mark. But yeah, they are in love and clearly smitten with each other, which is adorable. But I'm sitting back here looking at people leap to this defense saying like, oh my god, they love each other, they had sex, and I'm thinking, wow, the bar is in hell.
Hi there, I'm
Done with you. There is nothing wrong with finding comfort in media or appreciating couples that just are free of the usual mess associated with fictional relationships. But just because a couple is in love and healthy doesn't make it interesting. It's how the characters are written, how they interact, and the journey we undergo with them that earns at least my investment. Personally, when I see a fictional couple being nice and supportive of one another, I'm like, okay, that's to be expected. They have chosen a lane, now I need them to try and invoke that ah and ooh, that squeeze out of me. But the way Invincible can't really let Eve win and save Mark. There's never a lesson for him to learn through her, leaving these repetitive interactions to have a nice sentiment, but very little impact. If I thought it was just okay at first, it was boring by the 5th or 6th. And I think the key thing for like writing healthy relationships, or at least to make me interested in them, is that you have to tell me more about them than just, oh, they love each other. Again, that's to be expected, so it doesn't make them engaging, especially in a story that is undercutting those scenes. But if you want some positive examples of interesting, healthy couples, and just how they do it, first off, you gotta start with the all-time greats, Gomez and Morticia of the Addams Family. They set the mold for a married couple still very much in love, as look at them. Grand declarations, thirst, and an unshakable commitment to one another. You can say they're doing a similar thing to Mark and Eve, saying they love each other, but God, the chemistry. When Mark and Eve interact, it's like, okay, clearly you see each other as the other part of you. When it comes to Gomez and Morticia, you just feel the passion. But we want something more practical, but still kind of soulmates coded, even if it's like not really his. We got Legoshi and Haru from Beastars, post season 1, where after all the theatrics of how they got together, watching them figure out how they should act around one another is cute and filled with real life struggle, as the wolf boy is biologically programmed to eat this little wabbit. And that makes them interesting. It's like, okay, how are they gonna figure this out? What are they gonna do next? What is like a deal breaker, and how do they navigate this clearly difficult place? Well, it's always made clear that they truly love each other. If you guys want a cartoon example, well, Lumity. Luz and Amity in the Owl House, they get together, there's some trials and tribulations, you think they're rivals at the start, and then there's like, oh, they're in love, and it's cool. They start dating, but I feel like the thing that actually makes them like a really good couple and a really good counterexample to what happens in Invincible is, even if I don't think they're as interesting when they're together as they were when they were like getting together, Luz and Amity are still overcoming problems, they're still having talks. It still feels like their relationship is growing and changing, with us getting a lot of great intrigue, investment, and it always feels like, okay, there's something new. These two and their dynamic is not set in stone, so it is worth my time watching them. In contrast, Eve and Mark, again, to me, feel like they're on autopilot in a show convinced everyone is already in love with them, and therefore it doesn't need to put in the work to make people care. One of the lines that blew my mind on a second rewatch is where they're on their first date, and I watch them throw out the chance to like have some cute banter or build more of a dynamic. Instead, the show chooses to have them pat themselves on the back and just how much of them dating makes sense.
The weird thing is
that it isn't weird?
What bugs me isn't that like, oh, it's corny, is that their dynamic feels ever so slightly manufactured. Literally every shift in their relationship has the stank of the writers moving pieces on the board. Following Mark and Eve up until this point hasn't been a journey, it's been a waiting game. In fact, in one way, I'd even say their dynamic has gotten worse. As Mary Jane, famous love interest of Spider-Man, the original comic party girl whose seeming disinterest in Peter made her so popular that it basically forced the writers to pick her over Gwen. But one of the key things that made Mary Jane so beloved is how she was there for Peter, how the weight of his double life kept him isolated with no one to talk to or confide in, except for Mary Jane. She was his anchor, his sole solace in a chaotic world, and Eve is a less effective version of this. Not just because the writing won't allow it, but due to the fact that Mark does have so many people in his life that he can talk to. This is in season 1 where he had nobody. Like at the start of season 3, he has his mom, he has William, he has Oliver, he had Cecil when they weren't fighting. Like he even has that one guy who made his clothes, and Rex when he was alive. And this renders the role Eve is playing to be doubly damned, as it takes away from her specialness. The show keeps telling the characters to tell us how much they love each other. They keep begging us like, oh my god, don't you feel how close they are? Don't you feel like, oh my god, she said I love you, he loves her? But it's like, okay, you keep having them say that, but often feels surface level, that it's not as deep as a story thinks it is. And one of the things that I will never stop laughing at is that when they are fishing for clips to put in their grand romantic montage, there's no words in the English language to describe how much I howled when they played the waterfall scene. As that wasn't a relationship highlight. If they wanted it to be, they had to use the one of him looking at her. This one was Mark complaining about how Amber dumped him and Eve saying that Amber was right. Let that sink in. Across 22 episodes, they didn't have enough clips for a montage. Like, it's not good, but it's so funny once you clock it.
Are you smiling?
Do you want to fuck?
Fundamentally, my apathy for this relationship comes from just how painfully clear that this was endgame. How blatantly they used Amber to keep this relationship from happening, the bare minimum the show did to make me just desire Mark being with Eve, instead of like the death of his relationship to Amber, then telling me how convenient this relationship would be while jumping to grand declarations saying I love you, and just the wish fulfillment of emotional intimacy, just, it doesn't hit for me. For holding this couple up and saying, oh my god, they are perfect. When I'm really just thinking like, okay, this is the couple that I'm the least invested in this season. Truly, I thought Rex and Ray had way better chemistry. I was more invested in whatever like was going on with Robot and Monster Girl's situationship. I love Debbie. Paul's boring, but I kind of want to see where they go. And even the random villains from the montage got me more in the feels than Mark and Eve ever did, maimed or not. Every step of this relationship has not been terrible, but it has always been painfully transparent how they move at the behest of the writers, not the characters. With the story simply not giving them anything interesting to do, as they have 3 dialogue options whenever they're together. Eve isn't allowed to help Mark grow by engaging in any of like the moral dilemmas he's been trapped in. She's only allowed to be supportive and say he did the right thing, even in instances where she might have a more nuanced opinion. Like, you would think Eve of all people would recognize the dangers of superheroes doing what they think is right, regardless of the greater context. You know, the thing that her entire arc was about last season? Like, I don't want her to be devil's advocating Cecil, but there are opportunities to give Eve's dialogue a veneer of personality. Make it feel unique to her instead of something that I could have copied and pasted from any other character being supportive. With the idea that Mark needs this feeling inane to me. As yeah, it's true, Mark's life sucks. He would need someone to ground and support him, but these are fictional characters. They are vehicles to evoke emotions and to tell a great story. Everything they do is a choice by the writers, and so I can't separate that fact from just Eve's role in this story, as she went from having her own stuff going on to dropping all that to hard carry Mark's mental health. And the writing did not have to do that. Similarly, whenever people say Mark's the main character, so people's lives just revolving around him makes sense, I kind of roll my eyes, as in a series that keeps showing the humanity and struggles of the normal people of this world, how everyone has their own things going on, defaulting to the argument that Mark's struggles are special and should be prioritized to the detriment of others, is the kind of shit Nolan in season 1 would say. Mark may be the main character, but he and the show are improved by having a fully fleshed out world and supporting cast. So while Eve has always been supporting Mark, seeing her role in the story get shrunk down to dating him and having 2 cool fight scenes and getting Amber's seal of approval does feel like a downgrade. We're learning how much they love each other. Oh, well, they're making us care. But then you put in the context similar to Rex and Ray, where you know this relationship is only happening to make Rex's death hurt even more. That logic still tracks for Eve and Mark. The show wants us to love them, to understand why Mark loves her, so her getting fucked up, like, to motivate him, we feel it, we understand it. And we're also gonna recognize that apparently all of her getting maimed wasn't enough. But if I were to just say the thing that like truly made me not care, it's the fact that their dynamic plateaus immediately. What you get at the start of them dating is what you'll get for the rest of the season, and if you're not already on board, it became dull. Having a couple hit its stride is fine, but Mark and Eve don't feel like they hit their stride. They feel stagnant. With the one time an episode tries to say something about their relationship other than, I love you, it ends with them deciding that they were moving too fast, pumping the brakes. They keep acting the same way. No change, they reached their perfect form on their first date. They immediately had sex, and everything just will happen around them, but their bonded dynamic remains unchanged. Which in our story would be super romantic, but given how they were set up, the author's mitts being all over them to a point where it's the writer's achievement, not theirs, them settling into this static dynamic doesn't really do it for me. My Adventures with Superman did this better, Lumini did it better, Mark and Eve they don't have the chemistry to get away with being this milquetoast. Not to make it a competition, but it does feel so perfect that Amber and Mark got their own original song, but Mark and Eve just had to license older music, and that fits perfectly, because everything about them is recycled. And all that said, I don't think they're doomed to be dull to me forever. Yeah, for all my yapping about why I don't care about this ship, I do think this couple could easily win me over. Most of the issues I have with them are based on how this season is constructed. That we have to wait for Mark to finally snap, with Eve being there to keep him sane till we got Conquest. If we get a storyline that doesn't hinge so much on one giant dramatic moment, then having some variety in their interactions would be an easy way to make them more engaging. We'll be past them just being together, and we'll finally just have them do things together. Eve is definitely on track to have her own storyline as her powers are definitely fritzing out. But again, everything I've said, this is all why I don't fuck with this ship. Not saying I'm right, or that the writing is like objectively terrible. This is all my personal tastes and opinions about how Invincible has handled this romance, and has left me disinterested. The random villains getting a soft montage about their personal struggles and their love, that got me more invested in them than anything Mark and Eve have done. I think for me that comes down to execution and expectation. Random villains getting this sudden rich inner life and nuance is a revelation that stands in contrast to how we previously thought of them. Meanwhile, Mark, Eve, and all the drama that has come along with it has been everything I expected since episode 2. They're fine, they're okay. I don't think it's like, oh my god, this is offensively bad. I'm sorry, but I've seen too many more interesting versions of what they are to applaud just being supportive and victory sex. Also, remember to check out my sponsor Aura, and I did do a couple videos on my other channels, so if you have any more opinions to share, send them that way.